Hey everybody, it's Tracey Martin from Political Coffee, the official podcast. I'm checking in with you the day after the Minnesota versus Derek Chauvin jury verdict, which came down, as we all know. It held the entire nation and really the world in its grip when Judge Cahill read off that verdict, and he polled each and every one of the jurors. So say you one, so say you all. And it was a unanimous decision, guilty as charged on not one, but three verdicts, three charges. And so here we sit the day after the verdict, and many people are jubilant, they're celebrating. But I urge a word of caution, because one has to remember that Derek Chauvin is a former police officer, a former member of law enforcement. And as today's guest on Political Coffee succinctly put it, in America, police officers enjoy more due process than the average defendant. And I would agree with Attorney Stuart Friedman, who is an expert on pardons and executive clemency and also appellate law, which brings to mind the appeal. A word has it that Derek Chauvin will be filing an appeal. And, you know, if you notice that 2.5-hour closing, I think that was the run-up to the appeal. His attorney, who I believe did a yeoman's job, except for one issue, and I'll mention that a little bit later, he was making a record. He was making a record, setting it up for the appeal. I don't think that Derek Chauvin was shocked by the outcome of that trial. I don't think he was shocked by the verdict. Of course, once you hear it and it sinks in that your life is about to change, there is going to be somewhat of a reaction. But he was wearing a face mask because, you know, we're still in a pandemic, and you really couldn't see, except for I noticed the darting of his eyes back and forth, you know. You could tell he was processing it. But I thought he was pretty cool, calm, and collect after that verdict was read, and he was escorted out to begin his new life as not a defendant, but a convicted. So I do think that Eric Nelson, who represented Derek Chauvin, he did a yeoman's job, really made an excellent record for appeal. And what will be the issues on appeal? We discussed it earlier this evening on Political Coffee with attorney Robin McCoy and Stuart Friedman. Well, some of the issues brought up, Eric Nelson, he made a motion for change of venue. That was denied by the judge. He made a motion for sequestration of the jury during the entire trial. Yes, they were sequestered while they deliberated the jury verdict, but they were not they didn't go into sequestration during the entire trial. You know, there was that whole controversy about Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who, you know, represents a district in California, parachuting in and making those statements. Many thought that they were imprudent. I myself do not get behind them because she could jeopardize the outcome of this trial. And even the judge, Cahill, Timothy Cahill, admonished her. I think it's Timothy Cahill. It's Judge Cahill, nonetheless. Admonished politicians in general, and Maxine Waters in particular, for basically keeping their mouths shut when these trials are proceeding, especially these high-profile trials that could serve to have momentous impact on the entire country, as was the Minnesota versus Derek Chauvin trial. So, you know, the other thing that Judge Cahill did was, since he didn't sequester the jurors, he told them not to watch the news. Well, there's other ways to find out about what's going on in the world, and I thought that was a mistake. There's also the issue of confusing jury instructions regarding third-degree murder. And finally, the appellate issue of last resort, ineffective assistance of counsel. I thought that attorney Stuart Friedman really broke it down and outlined it for us, what it takes for ineffective assistance of counsel to fly. Now, me personally, I watched the trial very closely, and while I thought that Eric Nelson did a yeoman's job of representing a defendant like Derek Chauvin, who really, once you saw that video, 9 minutes and 29 seconds, how could any juror come back with an acquittal or a verdict of not guilty? But he was laying the groundwork for an appeal. But one thing that I thought he didn't do sufficiently was make objections to what many lawyers term emotional testimony that came in when the prosecution, laid out its case during that first week of trial. It was very effective, mind you, but I would have been objecting all over the place if I had been assigned to represent Derek Chauvin. But I was not. Eric Nelson was. And there are so many other issues that could be up for appeal. We will see. We will see. But Stuart Friedman, he talked about manifest injustice. I urge you to check us out. If you're on Facebook, go to Political Coffee, the official podcast on Facebook, or you can hit us up on YouTube, Political Coffee. Robin McCoy and Tracey Martin will pop up, and we have all of our latest episodes, and you will see tonight's episode featuring Super Attorney Stuart Friedman. Oh, and by the way, this Saturday we will have Meet the Candidate. We'll have a double show starting at 10 a.m., 1000 hours. Gubernatorial candidate Austin Chenge, I think that is how he pronounces his last name. He's an Oxford-educated attorney, and he will be challenging Gretchen Whitmer, who is the current governor of Michigan. Well, Gretchen Whitmer says that she's running for re-election, and Austin Chenge is going to be challenging her in 2022, and Attorney McCoy, I will be talking with him when we meet the candidate, Austin Chenge, this Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will also have, in our second hour, meet the candidate, Tosin A. Knight. He's the Dean of Culture at Western International High School in Detroit, Michigan. And he is also the president and founder of Caught Up, which is a mentoring program. I have so many questions for this candidate, Tosin Knight, about what his take is on everything that's happening in the world when it comes to young black men and how they are treated or mistreated by law enforcement, and what his company, Caught Up, can do to assist them. But, of course, the biggest question of all is, why is he running for a seat on Detroit City Council in the 4th District? You may recall that at the beginning of the month, Attorney McCoy and I interviewed Emil Elric. He's a former reporter, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter. I don't know, was that Freudian? I'm the attorney, he's the reporter. And he also won an Emmy. Well, why is he running for Detroit City Council? He answered the question. Go back and check it out on Political Coffee. But the focus this Saturday at 11 a.m. is on Tosin A. Knight. He's running in that very same district. It's an open seat because there is no incumbent, because the individual who formerly occupied that seat, Reverend Andre Spivey, well, the deadline was yesterday in Detroit, and he did not file to run. It was said that Reverend Spivey might run for the at-large seat for the Detroit City Council race, which covers the entire city of Detroit, but he did not. He did not put in any petitions. He did not submit anything yesterday, and he is an attorney now. He went to law school. I suppose he passed the bar exam, and he's on to, the next phase of his illustrious career as not only an ordained minister, and now, he's still a city council member until the end of the year, the end of the term for the next 8 months. And what's his next step? Well, he will be an attorney. So you want to catch both of those interviews this Saturday. But back to what's going on in America with excessive force. I myself represented a police officer for the city of Detroit. I was what they call outhouse counsel, and I represented actually 2 or 3 police officers. One of them was known as RoboCop. And during the time that I was on the case, we were moving towards settling. And that individual's name was William Melendez. So that brings us fast forward to 2021. We have this epidemic of excessive force. It's something that has always existed in the United States of America, but it seems to have really picked up steam, unfortunately. And the target is black people, particularly black men, but black women are not exempt. I mean, look what happened to Tatiana Jefferson, to Breonna Taylor, to Sandra Bland, Michelle Clouseau. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And now we have the heinous homicide, the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin. Well, there's a civil rights and police reform bill called the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021. It is HR 1280. And I'm asking everyone who is listening to me to contact their senators. Now, we know in Michigan we have Senator Debbie Stabenow and Senator Gary Peters. They're both Democrats and they're on board with this. But, you know, for people in other jurisdictions in other states who may have Republican senators, that call needs to be made to urge them to support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which was drafted by Democrats in the United States Congress, including members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, this piece of legislation was introduced in the United States House of Representatives on February 24th of this year, 2021, and the legislation aims to combat police misconduct, excessive force, and racial bias in policing. Now, what does it do exactly? Well, the bill aims to end certain police techniques, including chokeholds and carotid holds, two forms of potentially deadly force. Now, such practices should be banned at the federal level, and federal funding for local and state police agencies would be considered on those agencies outlawing them. The bill also seeks to improve police training, which is so much needed. You heard that the Department of Justice is opening up an investigation as to the law enforcement practices, the standards that are occurring in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But really, it's not just Minneapolis. You know, you have that Muhammad Noor shooting of Justine Diamond. Recently, we had the Dante Wright shooting in Brooklyn Center. And of course, everyone knows what happened to the dearly departed George Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin and 3 other police officers. Now, their trials are not going to take place until August the 23rd. I understand that there's talk about a plea deal. So back to this bill, it does seek to improve police training. I found it very ironic that this Derek Chauvin was, ironically enough, the field training officer for this J. Alexander Kuhn. He was only on, that was like his 3rd week or something. That might be a mitigating circumstance or factor for him. The other officer, Thomas Lane, you heard him on tape saying we should turn him over, and Derek Chauvin said no. That's why we have him on his stomach, so he could breathe, go figure. And then you had the officer Tao, who never touched George Floyd. You could see him never having any contact with George Floyd, but who didn't intervene. And this came out in testimony in the trial, during the trial. He said, see, this is what drugs do to you. He said that to the bystanders. So the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021 would also invest in community programs designed to improve policing and promote equitable new policies. Well, I mean, the chokeholds need to go. But does this bill go far enough? I mean, what about the registry for rogue police officers like Derek Chauvin? I mean, that needs to happen. And then, yes, what about the duty to intervene? Now, it's interesting because Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott, he's come up with a creative way to make this happen in terms of qualified immunity anyway, shifting the burden to police departments instead of the individual police officer. So we'll see what comes of that. But I just wanted to check in with you and let you know what my thoughts were on the trial. You must always respect the outcome of a trial in terms of the trier of facts verdict, whether it be the judge or a jury. In this case, it was a jury. I respect and support the verdict. And, you know, America has a lot of work to do. So I'm praying for this country. I'm praying for the family of George Floyd and the family of Daunte Wright, who, again, this police officer who shot Daunte Wright, you saw it on tape. Well, she meant to tase him, but she shot him. She was a field training officer as well. She's resigned, but, you know, wow. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm praying for America. God bless America. God bless you. And I will see you soon on Political Coffee. I hope you enjoyed my commentary. And we will be following this story closely. And again, if you are outside of Michigan, please call your senators and ask them to support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021, HR 1280. America needs change. America needs to respect all lives here and forevermore. Tracey out. Good night, everybody.